Vicky is getting ready to read the first reading, I just want to tell you a cute little story. Joseph of Cupertino was a Franciscan who lived in the 17th century. The reading that Vicky's going to be doing is from the 15th chapter of Luke's Gospel, and I want to tell you just a cute little story about it. There's a Catholic saint, his name is Joseph of Cupertino. He lived in the 17th century, and two things about him. He wasn't very intelligent, quite literally. He could barely read. And they would send him off into the barn to do all the dirty work, but he loved taking care of the sheep. And it's a long story, but a bishop kind of fell in love with him and pushed him towards being a priest. And the final test before he could be ordained a priest was he had to memorize one chapter of the Bible. He was terrible at memorization. They didn't tell you which chapter to memorize. They would say, quote, this particular chapter, and you had to know it. Well, he loved this story because he loved sheep, and he had this memorized. Only chapter he had memorized in the whole Bible, and it was this chapter. Very sweet.
So the good news of Jesus. The tax collectors and the sinners were all crowding around to listen to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes complained, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. "Which one of you with 100 sheep, if he lost one, would fail to leave the 99 in the desert and go after the missing one till he found it? And when he found it, would he not joyfully take it on his shoulders, and then when he got home, call together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my sheep that was lost'? In the same way, I tell you, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner repenting than over 99 upright people who have no need of repentance."
The second reading, the Gospel of Yogananda, is his commentary on the Gospel reading. The eternal, omnipresent, unchanging Spirit. See, God outside of time and space is larger than any concept, any image, infinite. The eternal, omnipresent, unchanging Spirit has neither a corporal body nor heavenly form. Meaning God's not really a little man or a little woman upstairs. But God makes himself known through the divinity in worthy instruments. Many are the voices that have intermediated between God and man. They are Purna avatars, liberated beings who are fully one with God. Their return to earth is to fulfill our God-ordained mission. The Lord, in the sacred Hindu Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, declares, "Whenever virtue declines and vice predominates, I incarnate as an avatar. In visible form I appear from age to age to protect the virtuous and to destroy evil doing in order to reestablish righteousness." End of quote. Without this intercession of God's love come to earth in the example, message, and guiding hand of his avatars, it would be scarce possible for groping humanity to find the path into God's kingdom amidst the darkness of miasma of this world. Lest his benighted children be lost forever in creation's delusive labyrinths, the Lord comes again and again in God-illumined prophets to light the way. The glory of Christ in the form of Jesus made visible the invisible light that leads to God. So I'd like to start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, we thank you for all the ways that you manifest your presence among us. Most especially tonight, we thank you for your avatars, your divine ones, who are pure reflections of your light, your truth, your beauty, your love, and your goodness. And we especially thank you for the avatars, the teachers, the gurus of the Kriya tradition. Avatar Babaji, Baba Lahiri Mahashaya, our Lord Jesus Christ, Sri Yuktaswara, and our Sadguru Paramahansaji Yogananda. Thank you for their presence. Thank you for your presence. And thank you for one another. Amen. So good evening. As I said at the beginning of the service, this is the second in a series of talks where I'm going to try to capture the essence of Kriya Yoga. And last week I talked about the fundamental truth not only of Kriya Yoga but of all contemplative and mystical traditions. That the true purpose of life is to know God. Now there are secondary purposes, but the ultimate purpose, the final purpose, is to know God. And that God created us in such a way that if we don't know God, and I don't mean in an intellectual, dogmatic sense, if we don't know God personally, experientially, if we don't experience our lives as being in communion with God, they don't work. We can never get enough of what we don't need. And what we really need is God's presence. Let me give you a real clear example. Never in the history of humankind have so many people, especially in America, had so much. More or less, most of us in this room literally eat the way kings and queens would only eat 300 or 400 or 500 years ago. We have more material comforts than any generation in the history of human life. Yet, in our country, we have an epidemic of addiction, depression, and anxiety. Why? Because we can never get enough of what we don't need, and what we ultimately need is God. So this leads me into the whole discussion of gurus, and I want to put it in a context for you. In the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, they have this whole understanding of a higher power, and let me just say how it works. A person comes to Alcoholics Anonymous, and as the first step says, to paraphrase the first step, my life is powerless. I'm powerless over my addiction, I'm powerless over alcohol, and my life has become unmanageable. Now that's not just true for the alcoholic, that's true for most of us. And again, look around at the state of affairs in our country, it's true for us collectively. The second step is very interesting. Came to believe that a power greater than me, a higher power, a power beyond Sigmund Freud, a power behind social analysis, bigger than social analysis, a transcendental power, God, only a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. Third step was, made a decision to turn my life and my will over to my higher power, over to the care of God as I understand him or her. So, what an avatar is, what a guru is the literal embodiment of the higher power. I'll say it a little bit differently. A guru is someone who shows up in history, in time and space, and they are simply a P.O. box for God. As Yogananda says, in previous lives, they've worked through all of their karma. They've emptied themselves of ego. They've emptied themselves of any selfishness, any tint of sin. And they come back just to be a vessel to lead others back to God. Again, they're an embodiment of that whole notion of a higher power. They are the personification of a higher power. They are like a force field, a gravitational field. And that to the extent that we come into contact with this gravitational field, this force field of divine energy and love, they elevate us out of our unhappiness. They elevate us out of our addictions, out of our powerlessness. They elevate us into the divine light. And let me make it clear, when I'm talking about a guru, I'm not talking about an inspired teacher. There are many inspired teachers. Some of them write great best-selling books. That's good. That's not, most gurus do not write best-selling books. They're very rare. I'm talking about Jesus. I'm talking about Babaji. I'm talking about Ramana Maharshi. I'm talking about Yogananda. I'm talking about the Buddha. I'm talking about Ananda Moya Ma. I'm talking about the Blessed Mother in the Christian tradition. I make it very clear to people, I'm not the guru of the Sisi Institute. Yogananda is. I just represent him. So we're not talking about your average good spiritual teacher. We're talking about individuals who are embodiments of the divine in time and space. They're the visible image of the invisible God. And to be in their presence is to be elevated out of our ignorance and out of our suffering. Now, I'm going to make a bold statement that is very true. If you want to go all the way in the spiritual life, if you want to experience your highest spiritual potential, if you want to be all that God has created you to be, you need a relationship with a God-realized guru. You need them to channel that higher power, that higher energy to you. You can make progress without one, but it won't be the optimal progress that you can make. I can almost read some of your thoughts. Well, why is that? Think about it. Most of us are pretty clever, first of all. We'll cut corners wherever we can cut corners. We'll play games with ourselves and other people. We need something bigger than us, wiser than us, more intelligent than us to save us from ourselves. You've heard me say this before. Albert Einstein said the consciousness that created the problem is never the consciousness that can solve the problem. Our consciousness has created the problems, individually and collectively. Only a consciousness larger than ourselves can save us from ourselves. So what I want to talk about tonight is, all right, so how do we make the contact with the guru? What does that look like? Well, again, I'm going to borrow a concept from the 12 steps. The first thing is, we have to realize that we need the guru. We have to realize, not just in an intellectual way, but in the atoms and the cells of our bodies, we have to realize that we are in need of a power that's greater than us. If we don't really realize that, we will not embrace the relationship with the guru because we don't really think we need it. We need it, but we don't think we need it. And typically, for most of us, we only get to that point of needing it when we've suffered enough. When we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. You have to want it. You have to know that you need it in order to want it. You have to experience, in the language of the 12 steps, a degree of powerlessness before we will reach beyond ourselves. So I'm going to ask you a question. Don't answer it out loud. Do you need God? I mean, do you really, really need God? It's okay if you don't think you do, but I want you to wrestle with the question. Do you really need God? Now, I've been on this path, been on a spiritual path since I've been 16, but on the Kriya path since my early 30s. I'm 61 now. I need God more now than I ever have in my whole life. So do you need God? The second thing, if we need God, and if we acknowledge that we need God, and if we pray for God to send us the guidance, the guru, God will do it. But the relationship has a certain look. It has a certain flavor. I want to go to the autobiography of the yogi. And this is where Yogananda meets his guru, Sri Yukteswar. And Yogananda had spent the whole previous night, he was so frustrated, he spent the whole previous night praying for God to send him an embodied higher power. Praying for God to send him a God-realized guru. And he meets his guru. And he says something very interesting to the guru. The first thing he does is when he meets him, he recognizes that somehow he's the one. Intuitionally, his soul just felt that Sri Yukteswar was his guru. And the immediate title he gave him was Guru Dev. You sang it tonight in the second song. What does that mean? It means not, hey, guy. It doesn't mean, hey, fellow human being. It means heavenly teacher, divine teacher. And then he did something very interesting. Not part of the Western culture, but it is part of the Indian culture. He got down and he touched the feet of the guru. So he knows he needs his guru. That's the first thing. He meets his guru, and he immediately acknowledges, you are the teacher. You are the one that God sent. You are my Guru Dev. And I'm touching your feet, which is saying, I am willing to sit at your feet. I am willing to be taught. I am willing to be a student. I am willing to empty myself of what I think I know so that you can fill me with what I really need to be filled with. It's the same thing in the Gospel of John. There's that beautiful story of Martha and Mary. Mary's the sister of Lazarus. And we're told when Jesus came, what did she do? She sat at his feet, hanging onto, clinging onto every word that came from his mouth, because every word that came from his mouth was filled with truth and beauty and goodness. So once we find the guru, are we willing to be a student? Are we willing to sit at the feet? Are we willing to say, I know nothing, so that we can know everything? Are we willing to be empty so that we can be filled? And again, I've been on this path for over 30 years. I'm still learning new things from Yogananda and from Christ on a daily basis. I'll read something from Yogananda and I get it at a deeper and deeper level. I go, wow. But we have to be willing to sit at their feet. I'm going to take this a level deeper. It's going to be a little bit challenging. We don't like this in our culture. Yogananda pledged his obedience to the Guru, to Sri Yukteswar. I'm not asking any of you to pledge your obedience to me. It's not where I'm going with this. Are you willing to be obedient to the teacher when the teacher teaches you? You don't have to understand it. I'm just willing to say, yes, yes, yes. See, God can only lead us to the extent that we're willing to be led. We have to become a sheep before we become a shepherd. Third piece. I know this is kind of heavy, but stay with me. Again, I'm going to refer to the autobiography of the yogi because it gives us the blueprint of the relationship with the guru. So he meets Sri Yukteswar, he pledges his obedience, he's going to be teachable, he's going to be open. And then Sri Yukteswar says these beautiful words to him. He said, I pledge my unconditional love to you for all of eternity. But it doesn't stop there. He says to Yogananda, will you pledge your love, your unconditional love to me? Yogananda said, yes, no doubt. I love you unconditionally for eternity. I want you to see how this relationship deepens and ripens. So first we have the need, and we acknowledge the need. Secondly, we meet the guru, and we say yes, and we sit at their feet, and we say, teach me, teach me, teach me. But then the guru takes it to a whole different level. It's not just the guru up here and we're down here. The guru says, I love you. Do you love me? Because if you love me, then we become brothers. We become sisters. We become intimate. The way that the guru lives in our heart in a very living way, in a very real way, in a very palpable way, is love. Love is the energy of God that creates the connection. So what Sri Yukteswar was saying to Yogananda is, I understand you want me to bring you to God. I understand you want me to bring you to the heights of spiritual realization. I can't do that unless we love each other. Unless I live in you in a loving way. Unless the energy of love is flowing between us. Love brings us into communion. Sri Yukteswar is saying, in a manner of speaking, I want to bring you to God, but you have to be in communion to me, with me. Love is the way that we experience communion. Love is a sweet energy that pulls us together and unifies us. Jesus did the same thing in the Gospel of John. Peter denied him 3 times the night before he was crucified. After the resurrection, he appears to Peter. You got to imagine Peter's not feeling any sense of communion with Jesus. He's got to be feeling a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. Jesus doesn't address the shame and guilt. He doesn't talk theology. He doesn't talk theory. He says to Peter 3 times, Peter, do you love me? I want my love to break through the walls that you put up, the fear that you put up, the shame that you put up. Do you love me, Peter? And 3 times he asked, and Peter 3 times said, I love you. You know I love you, Jesus. Jesus did that to reestablish the communion with him. Love is the force that brings us into union, that allows the guru to raise us up to new and deeper levels. So I want to ask you a question. Some of you have Jesus as your guru. That's great. Some of you have Ramana Maharishi as your guru. Many of you have Yogananda as your guru. Very simple question, but it's more important than any technique I could ever teach you. More important than any insight that I could ever give you. This is the $1 million question. Do you love Jesus? Do you love Yogananda? Do you really love them? Do you want your love to grow deeper and deeper? And you know you love them because you want to yield to them. You want to give your heart to them. You want to be in communion. Do you love them? Sometimes when I'm feeling out of communion, and I'm feeling disconnected, sometimes it's Jesus, sometimes it's Yogananda. I visualize them in my mind's eye. And I say, I do love you. Help me to love you better. I love you, Yogananda. I love you, Jesus. I love you. I love you. And I feel the communion coming back. That's the most important question you can ever answer in your life. It brings us into union with the Guru. Do you love them? And don't be afraid to say it. I love you. I love you. I love you. There's another level. It doesn't stop there. Again, I'm just referring to the autobiography of a yogi. It's a wonderful blueprint for the guru-disciple relationship. It doesn't just stop at communion. It doesn't just stop at Yogananda sitting at his feet and becoming teachable. It doesn't stop with Yogananda needing him. There's a story in the autobiography where Sri Yukteswar is doing some teaching of Yogananda, teaching him some subtle truths on the spiritual path. And Yogananda is listening with one ear, but he's kind of half imagining his future. And Sri Yukteswar said, I'm paraphrasing, pay attention. And he said, I know what you're thinking. Yogananda said, what? He said, you're thinking about your future, but it's kind of muddled, isn't it? Yes. He said, you're even thinking about some buildings. Yes. He said, I'll tell you about your future. You're going to run a school for children in India. And then you're going to go to the United States. And you're going to buy this hotel on the top of a mountain in the city of the angels. And it's going to become your mother center. And Jesus and Babaji are going to send you to the West because there's many saints waiting to be awakened. That's your future. Yogananda kind of said, wow, cool. But I want you to get the subtlety, because what's true for Yogananda is true for us. The Guru doesn't stop at communion. The Guru resurrects our most soulful dreams. The Guru resurrects our future. The Guru gives us and awakens us to a future that we can't even imagine. A future that outstrips our imagination. See, we come into the world with wonderful, soulful dreams given to us by God. We come into the world with a destiny. Everyone has it. God's plans for us are larger and more infinite and greater than we can ever imagine. And those plans are imprinted on our souls, and we lose touch with them. But when we come into contact with the Guru, they resurrect our potential. They resurrect the possibilities. And they point us towards a glorious future. That's what the relationship with the Guru does. It resurrects our potential to live a divine life here and now, in this moment, in this lifetime. That's why we need the Guru. The last thing I'll say about the Guru, I'll tell a little story, and then I'll close. Ultimately, the Guru doesn't point us towards the Guru, they point us towards God. One of Yogananda's most loyal devotees, disciples, Dayamata, who took over the organization and ran it for over 50 years after Yogananda died. She was so devoted to Yogananda. She was his personal secretary. And she went through a period of time where Yogananda didn't give her the time of day. He ignored her. And finally she got mad and she sat down under a tree at the headquarters there on Mount Washington, and she said to God, just like the Buddha said, I'm going to stay under this tree and I'm not going to move until you tell me why he's ignoring me. And after 3 or 4 hours, it came to her. He's ignoring you because he doesn't want you to focus on him, Dayamata. He wants you to focus on me and God. He didn't come to bring you ultimately to himself. He came to bring you to me, to God. He's teaching you that lesson. She said, okay, climb down a little mountain. Coincidentally, she ran into Yogananda. And Yogananda said, now do you understand Dhyana? She said, yes. The Guru ultimately brings us home to our soulful longing to God. They introduce us to God, but they are our friends for eternity. I'll close with one more little story that captures it perfectly. One of Yogananda's most advanced disciples was a monk named Bhaktinanda. Bhaktinanda means devotion and union, devotion and bliss. And he was very devotional. He loved Yogananda. They said that this Bhaktinanda reminded people of Francis of Assisi. He had that feeling. He was a real saint. He died about 10 years ago. But there's stories of him healing people. And one day he woke up, and all through the day he just mentally kept on saying, Yogananda, I love you. Yogananda, I love you. Just literally said it all day long. And finally Yogananda was coming. Yogananda stopped. And before Bhaktinanda could say anything, Yogananda said, I love you too, Bhaktinanda. God loves you. Whoever your guru is, Jesus or Yogananda, they love you. When Yogananda first met Sri Yukteswar said, oh, I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for you. Your guru is with you. They've been waiting since before you were born. They love you with an unconditional love. And they will walk you through every trial and challenge until you reach your own resurrected state. Do you love the Guru?